All right, well, it looks like everyone's here, so we'll get started. I'm just going to do a real brief introduction about the Winslow Technology Group, a little overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to have Brian Deach then introduce himself. He's from Zscaler, a Zscaler extraordinaire, as they call it. um, a little bit about the Winslow Technology Group. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. We are headquartered right outside of beautiful Boston, Massachusetts, in Waltham. We have field offices in New York City, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C. We like to say we specialize in everything from the data center to cloud to services and security and networking to endpoint. One of the differentiators about the Winslow Technology Group is that we really like to focus on delivering great outcomes. So we have our, passion for technology, our passion for customer service, blend that with expertise. I think we've been keeping track of it, but at this point we're almost up to 400 years of combined technology experience alone, and that doesn't even include the other experience that other folks have from a business perspective on the team. So when we combine the passion and our expertise and experience overall, we really know that we're well positioned to deliver really excellent outcomes, and outcomes is what we're all about. So with that in mind, I did want to introduce Brian Deach from Zscaler. When it comes to outcomes in terms of modern network security, Zscaler is an awesome partner, awesome customer satisfaction service. We actually use Zscaler internally at the Winslow Technology Group. That's how strongly we feel about the technology and platform. So Brian, the floor is yours for a little introduction, little background about yourself and Zscaler.
Look at you hyping me up, brother. So thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to it. And you guys are awesome because nothing's worse than anybody that's selling goods and they just drop some gear and disappear. So the outcomes is important. I'm 100% on the same page as you. So yes, my name is Brian Deach. I am the Chief Technology Evangelist at Zscaler. I've been here a little over 7 years. Started off as an SE and architect and kind of moved my way up. How I got here is a really fun story if we have time. But with that said, I'm very excited to be on the podcast today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm interested in the story of how you got there. So I guess before we get into the tech, we can warm up with that.
We'll warm up. All right. So go back to 2015. I was in San Antonio, Texas, and
Okay.
a gentleman came into the F5 SCO. His name was Guy Kawasaki, and he gave a presentation that day that changed everybody at F5 Networks, myself included. The way that we engaged with customers, wrote emails, how we dressed, shook hands, how we smiled. And I remember he at the very end of his presentation, he stood up. He goes, "Hey, Pixar didn't happen." He took a selfie of everyone, and I was like, "Oh my God, I know what I want to do." And he was the former chief technology evangelist of Apple. So I ran
Okay.
out the back door and I looked for him. I caught him on the escalator and I took a selfie with him. And I reached and basically I texted my wife. I was like, "I know what I want to do." So in 2015, the goal was become a chief technology evangelist, wherever I'm at, and then
Okay.
eventually do like a main stage presentation, which I actually got to do this year, and I had so much fun with it.
Awesome. Where was the main stage at? I'm curious.
It was in Las Vegas in front of 3,000 people, all Zscaler
Awesome.
employees and partners, and it was wild, man. It was,
Awesome.
and what
Awesome.
the best part was so again, we're going off on a tangent, but why not, right?
It's all right. It's the
So
morning. People are still waking up. Let's be honest,
yeah.
Okay.
So because of SCO was going on, stuff like that, it was like this weird time frame, and I was leaving early because my wife's birthday. So then I get a text about doing this thing that I've been wanting to do since 2015. I'm like, it's on day two, and in my head, I get on a Monday, so day's Tuesday, and I'm out Wednesday. I'm like, heck yeah, sign me up. And then the calendar invite comes over, and I'm telling my wife, and I was like, hey, that thing I've always wanted to do? She's like, yeah. I was like, on Wednesday when I'm supposed to come home for your birthday? She's like, yeah. I'm like, it's actually on Wednesday. And she just looked at me and she goes, "Is there any way I can come watch?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's find out." So she actually went there to support me, and
Awesome.
it was so cool. It was a
Awesome.
highlight
Oh,
of my career.
that's an awesome story. Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing. That's good.
Yeah, now you guys know way too much about me.
I know this is good. We can social engineer an attack on you at Zscaler, your personal life, the whole bit
Yeah,
now. So
that's just
um
oh
so speaking of zero trust, um, you know, over the last year or so, if there was one phrase that was overused and now I don't really hear it much at all, it was zero trust. That turned into SASE in terms of modern VPN connectivity. So I do think zero trust and SASE have been sent to the dumpster fire of buzzwords. So I guess like, can you boil down what SASE is, what zero trust is, why it matters, and maybe a little bit about Zscaler's history and the overall kind of claim to fame?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's cut through all the buzzword BS, right? And
Sounds good to me.
SASE is simple. It says it's trust no one, not your users, not your devices, not even that IT guy that brings in donuts on Fridays, right? Nobody gets automatic access to the network. With Zscaler, there really is no network. Every damn thing needs to be verified.
Hmm.
It's the simple approach to it. And of course, there's more things to it, but the claim to fame was like, I think it was in 2007, our founder, Jay Chaudhry, he came up with this idea of doing cloud security. And he invented this entire idea way before other companies even figured out what cloud was or even spell it. So I
Hmm.
would say that they're definitely, kind of the top dogs in the game without being, the 500-pound juggernaut.
Sure.
But the platform is pretty simple, right? Trust nothing, posture it, and broker access based upon the identity of the user, of the workload, IoT, OT device, without introducing any latency.
Cool. That last bit is important, and if I think back to my history or experience with Zscaler, even years back, at the time, it was really difficult for people to do SSL and TLS
Mhm.
inspection at scale, and even now, that remains actually problematic, and more we're seeing threat actors using encryption, obfuscated protocols to get into someone's network, if you will, or if they're there to get out of someone's network and exfiltrate data. So I still think that kind of original story of Zscaler of massive scale, firewall capacity, or unlimited in a sense because it's cloud powered, is kind of like an interesting backdrop as well.
It really is, and the reality is the attackers, right, the bad guys, they're doing all kinds of nefarious things. And so when you think of Zscaler, a lot of people think, oh, proxy 80 and 443, but the reality is they're using channels like
Sure.
DNS,
Yeah.
DOH,
Yep.
Quick, SSL, and TLS. So
Yep.
that's, our product isn't just 80 and 443. It's
Right.
really a proxy built upon all ports and all protocols. So be able to inspect that, but more importantly, you have to be able to introduce security without disrupting any lines of business. And that's really what
Yep.
our focus is on. When we talk about those outcomes, the tech is one thing, but really keeping the end users and the administrators happy about
Mhm.
this is paramount.
Yeah. I see something that many organizations do, and I see even questions about this on cyber insurance renewals, especially for inbound RDP, for example. But
Right.
organizations continue to poke holes in their firewalls to allow applications inbound from the internet to support their users. And what we see with that is they're either faced with deploying like a WAF or an advanced IPS, which is ridiculously expensive and pretty complicated to implement and administer, or which is the more common, the path of least resistance. They're just allowing applications in and allowing traffic in, whether it's HTTP, HTTPS, or other.
Yeah.
So you know I think this product is called this component is ZPA essentially. So you can tell us a little bit about that. But how is Zscaler effectively helping reduce a customer's attack surface by not poking all these holes? I think this is one of the more important pieces that's a little abstract, but
Yeah.
um,
I'm glad you brought that up. Like poking holes in the network firewall, right? That's his amateur hour. And so Zscaler looked at it and said, hey, if you have a VPN, if you have VDI, if you have anything exposed to the internet, right? What do you got to do? You have to figure out how to secure that. And the
yeah,
underlying tone there, if it's reachable, it's reachable. It doesn't matter what you're using. At some point in time, you've had to do a patch, maintenance, upgrade, something like that. So Zscaler's premise is simple. Like there is no inbound ACL to those applications, right? In
right,
fact, VPN is gross and yucky. We want no one on VPN.
right,
Hopefully, I can talk about that as well. But if you can't get there, then all of a sudden, all that administrative headaches, the patches, maintenance, and upgrades, not really the days isn't on you to figure out. And
right,
so what Zscaler does, right, is it's kind of simple. There's a VM that gets deployed on-prem. That VM has what I call application adjacency. So it talks to that HTTP, HTTPS internal application, RDP, VNC, but whatever it is, even a firewall, I didn't really care.
Mhm.
Has a, it can just talk to it. But rather than wait for traffic to come inbound to it, it phones home back to the Zscaler cloud. So it's an inside out connection. And if you think about the Zscaler cloud kind of being the gel in the middle, we have users reaching out to the cloud. When a user arrives right there, we know who the user is. You know, if they have authorization, we can posture
Mhm.
them, but we're not going to put them onto the network. And so with VPN or anything else that's out there, your verdict is like it's old, right? It's allow or deny.
Right.
There's allow, deny, steer, isolate, deceive, warn, coach. Like there's all these
Yeah.
different outcomes. But in the interest of connectivity, if a user is allowed to talk to an application, we have like this little ET phone home moment. So the user comes in, the little VM on the Zscaler cloud reaches right
Yep.
here. We make a little connection baby, and we allow that user to talk to that application. And what's really neat about this is your brokered connection based upon the identity. You're not actually on the network. So think of
Right.
all your internal applications. You're going to start to access those the exact same way you would Office 365.
Yeah.
So they immediately become cloudy, and that means you can get there if we know who you are, you have authorization to do so, you're coming from a corporately owned PC, but you'll never again be on the network. You have to, let's
Right.
be real. Your biggest liability in life is your users. So if you can take
Oh,
those
for sure.
liabilities off of there,
Yeah.
hide all those applications, you can't reach it,
Yep.
can't breach it. No
Yep.
SQL injection. Yeah.
I just like love that concept of like almost forget everything you know about networks in some ways. And rather than using a network to control access, you're using identity, application, and connectivity, but not specifically a network, by the lot, the normal sense to connect users to applications and not users to networks to applications. Like I think that's so powerful from a secure architecture perspective.
It
Um,
really is. And I should want to like put
yeah,
a little exclamation mark on that. What, let me think about this. Let's put a little exclamation mark on that. What people have to understand is that when you're introducing Zscaler, is that you already have like this awesome network and connectivity. I'm the security that's just going to be riding on top of it at the end
right.
of the day. And so we're brokering access based upon the identity or the workload or the IoT or the OT device. And it's an abstract layer, right? They still get connectivity, leveraging all the cool sexiness that you've created being in the past before. But now I'm introducing visibility, I'm
Right.
introducing the identity and tying that all together.
Yeah, I love it. Administrative note, I'm not sure I covered. If people have questions for Brian, post them in the chat actively. If we run out of time and aren't able to get to everyone's questions, or anyone's questions, just because the conversation's rolling here, we will get back to you afterwards. But definitely post any questions you have in the chat, and we'll try to get back to you either today or afterwards. So little
I will
administrative.
personally drive to your house and knock on your door. I'm kidding. I won't do that.
Sweet. Awesome. But not on your wife's birthday. That was a one and done.
Yeah, that was a one and done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You mentioned VPN, and I did want to focus on that a little bit. We have a supplemental, if you will, infrastructure incident response practice. It's focused on infrastructure recovery, and I would say one of the most common attack vectors that we see is self-managed VPN. That could be because of a vulnerability that was unpatched, a 0 day on, a particular firewall brand, and it happens on all of them. No one is immune to that. Um, Not only that, but and we hit on this in the other one. When users are allowed, to VPN in, they're essentially being brought in to the inside or the secure part from the outside. Although they're, marginally authenticated, we certainly see MFA attacks. We've seen even SIM swap type MFA attacks to get through that second factor. You mix that with like self-service password reset, and now threat actors have a way directly on a network that doesn't look unlike normal user traffic. So, how is Zscaler helping customers essentially eliminate the need for self-managed VPN and bringing that greater level of security to their environment?
Yeah, self-managed VPNs, that's a relic of the past, right? That's like showing up to a World Series game with a toothpick for a baseball bat. Like there's probably better ways of doing it.
Yeah.
The problem I see with VPN is that you can, again, let's say that the user is great and all that good stuff, and they've been a part of the organization for a long time. you're putting them back onto the network, right? And let's say that this user is the next Edward Snowden, right? They want to bounce around the network like a gosh darn field mouse, just leaving a path of destruction. You can do that. Now,
Mhm.
I'm a realist. You have some type of segmentation. You have an internal DMZ and database networks, but again, there's still,
You're hoping people have that. I feel like that's being generous.
you know what?
But
I am being a little generous, right? But in a Zscaler world, you don't have that. So like
yeah.
if you're on VPN and you do like a netstat or you do an mmap, you kind of see everything that's there. Now, if you're on Zscaler and you're at my house, again, this is poor OPSEC, but what are you going to see? Raspberry Pi, Apple TV, Epson printer. You're not going to see anything. Everything's
Mhm.
completely dark. You can't hack
Yeah.
what you can see,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. I think like another part of that too that isn't often considered until an incident happens, and this is just in our own kind of experience. Um, not to mix another buzzword into this, but folks don't really tend to consider air gapping the management plane or the management of networks and systems until it's too late. And whether it's a backup system, an email system, like if you think about M365 in some ways, or Google Workspace is kind of air gapped from people's networks now. Uh, like having a threat actor on someone's network makes it possible for them to pivot and compromise not just like data and applications, but also the management of it, making it incredibly difficult to recover from that. So, um, talk with me a little bit about how Zscaler itself is managed and how that out of band management, I'll call it, almost provides a layer of air gap in terms of continuing to provide that app to app or user to app, I should say, connectivity, even if a threat actor was to compromise an environment.
Let's take you, for example. How long have you been at Winslow? Let me ask you that.
Almost 6 years.
Okay, you've been at Winslow for almost 6 years. How long have you guys been using Zscaler?
We have been a partner of Zscaler for I think about 3 or 4 of that, and we just onboarded with Zscaler earlier this year.
Okay, so it's
Fully. Yep.
safe to say that you know where all the bodies are buried, right? You've been there long,
I
you
would
know.
say so. Yes.
Okay. So this is where we kind of get into this whole like insider threat, the next Edward Snowden,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So this is where deception comes in. Now, yes, we do all the same boring stuff, internal decoys, DMZ based decoys, breadcrumbs in Active Directory. But what makes me really special is like, let's take you for example, Matt. You know that back in the day, you had the ability to like SSH to the firewall for whatever reason, but
Right.
now with Zscaler, you don't. Now I
Right.
could be
Right.
archaic, right? And I could just
Yep.
block you.
Yep.
But what happens if I want to say, you know what? Instead of blocking him, I'll deceive him. And what my deception technology does right here is that it doesn't live on-prem. It actually lives in the Zscaler cloud. So I can let you get there. And what's really neat about this is you come in, I know definitively who you are. Now, if you try to replace somebody else's credentials from there, you
Hmm.
simply have a problem. So let's take another Brian that's out there. I
Okay.
take a high fidelity alert and I turn that over to the help desk or to the SOC. And I say, hey, I know that Matt's a bad guy. I know that this other Brian's already had his credentials compromised. So what do? We introduce Matt to the Internet Jail Group membership. What does that really mean? Your ability to reach out to internet, SaaS, any internal application completely revoked. And then we reach out to the other Brian and be like, hey, dude, you've been phished, right?
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
your hands and eyes. And even if you were able to log into that firewall or to that VM that we fire up in the cloud, and you pull down something down from, briand.com that says riddled with malware, you can't go east to west because there is no east to west. You're just stuck in
Right.
my Zscaler cloud. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the lens that we look. We have to be able to deceive them without them even knowing.
Right. Right. Right.
And
That's
then
cool. I mean, like, what you like a app connector even to like a file share called like salaries or something like payroll information, something juicy like that to like attract a target almost and see
so we can do
who or
those
what
as
hits
well.
it, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the goal with Zscaler is to provide user to application segmentation.
Hmm.
So if you're not allowed to talk to salaries, then why on earth should you even have the ability to hit the front door? I
Right.
could block you or I could deceive you.
Right.
Deceiving is where the power is. 'Cause that's when I start to find the insider threats
Yep.
or the active threat actor on the network.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Um, one of the reasons I hear that people say they need VPN or like kind of need this concept of self-managed VPN is because they don't think applications are supported. I believe with the newer version of zTunnel and ZPA especially, you can support almost any application, right? Like whether it's a CIFS share, a traditional web app, or even a client server app. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about the broad support that you have to connect like any user to just about any application?
So I'm sure there's someone on this webinar right now is like, they will never be able to support an AS400. Well, spoiler alert, I do support that. So I have all the way back to that. I would say that one of the former sticking points was around VoIP, right? Because the challenge that I have, or I shouldn't say the challenge, what I'm trying to do is keep the users off the network. Legacy VoIP depends on what? That the user's on the network, so I can
Right.
ring the user and they can pick up the phone and
Yep.
answer it. So
Yep.
we introduced VoIP support, but like a CIF share, database 1433 doesn't matter. All ports, all protocols be able to support that moving forward. So there's really
Okay.
nothing that doesn't work on the Zscaler platform.
Okay. Okay. How about even like optimization, like not to get too far into like ZDX, but this is like your client experience version, and you do have POPs that are either in or around main data centers for Microsoft and Google and so on and so forth. Do
Yeah.
you find that once folks are on Zscaler, they actually have like an optimized connection as opposed to traditional kind of VPN to an office?
So 100%, right? And I
Okay.
actually wrote down the speeds is one of the things. So I have a little story that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
But
Go for it.
yeah, when we talk about Zscaler, forget the ZIA and ZPA and ZDX. It's just Zscaler, right? And I want to provide a fast line and path of that. So on a VPN, the challenge is if I'm in Arizona and I'm on a full tunnel VPN in New York and I'm going out to Office 365, I'm traversing the nation to do this, right? Like
Yep.
that's insane. That's what crazy people do. On Zscaler is a little bit different. If I have an application that's back in New York, but that's where the data center is at, then I go there for that application. But if I'm in Arizona, why don't I just go to the San Jose one? Now
Right.
the challenge, right, would be, well, man, local DNS tells me that I need it's my recursive DNS is all the way in New York. So even though you're telling me to go out through Arizona and you go through the Los Angeles node, it's still telling me to go to the LA one. Spoiler alert, when that traffic arrives in my cloud, even though you're asking for Office 365 halfway around the US, I understand that the closest pop to you is going to be in San Jose. I just broke
Right.
the connection. And I do that with 800 other SaaS-based applications. Now, with all of that said, I had a very challenging customer, challenging the status quo. And
Sure.
they said, oh, we want to do this whole thing with you and blah, blah, blah. And so we go through there. Bro, what I did in 4 hours blew them away. And the CISO came back to me and goes, dude, anyone can be fast in the United States. He's like, you have to be faster around the world. We want you to POV in Singapore. And spoiler, alert, you have to be faster than on-prem security. I'll just leave it at that. I was like, bro, like, all right. So number one, like, I'm okay with this, but you're like, if we're gonna have like this challenge, then I need you to understand that we're not going to just look at hops because that's
Right.
not it. Really, I want to look at like how long does it take for that page to render? Is
Right.
the overall user going to be happy?
Right.
So I work closely with a really smart guy on the customer side, and he wrote like a script that would fire off randomly throughout the day for 500 users that would go out and load the page,
Okay.
87 different destinations,
Wow.
and then do the metrics and then compare us versus the on-prem stuff.
Okay.
Uh, I think it was 56 out of the 87 different business critical 56 out of the 87 business critical applications, we were faster than the on-premise solution.
Wow.
And that
Wow.
was 5 years ago, bro. Like
Wow.
that's insane.
Wow.
So when I talk with customers, I'm a little cocky in the fact that I'm like, hey, if you want to go down this road with Zscaler, things are gonna be better than they ever were, right? And
Right.
then every once in a
Right.
while you have like that packet pusher, that network in that's like, I don't know. Bear with me. Let me show
Like
you how this
give it a
architecture.
try. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess like not to go totally off topic, but
Let's go off topic. It's
yeah,
good.
okay. Tell us a little bit about like the POV process because sometimes seeing is believing, and I know I believed in Zscaler as a solution, but until I had my hands on it here at Winslow, and I could do cool things like if you're not on a Zscaler secured connection, you can't log into our CRM. Like there were like light bulbs that kept going off after kind of the
Mhm.
implementation. So do you have like a POV process, and how does what does that generally look like?
Yeah, so we definitely do. And the idea here is first we kind of capture the current state of what your environment looks like. We do like an architecture workshop.
Okay.
And then from there, we produce like, hey, your guys' North Star is X, Y, and Z. And based off of the things that we can do in Zscaler, these are the products that map to it. And then we come
Okay.
up with like a phased approach. Now, everything that we've discussed today can be done in like 4 hours, right? And that's if you spend like an hour to grab lunch and like 10 minutes to talk about your feelings. Like it really,
Everyone needs lunch and all IT people need to talk about their feelings. So like
exactly.
we're good. Okay. Yep, got it. Okay.
And what we try to do is like looking at the current state architecture to figure out
Yep.
where the problem child's at and how Zscaler can come in and make life better. Now, what's wild about this is, again, I've been here for 7 years. Users 1 to 100 will be far more difficult than users 101 to 1 million. That's just how it's been since I came aboard. And on this, a little note that I want to bring up right here. So 7 years ago, I came aboard, and I remember telling my wife, I'm like, hey, if this thing sucks, I'm going to go quit and work for Palo Alto. So within the first 2 weeks, this is what happened. Number one, I started sending traffic from my house to the cloud. And I was like, wow, this is kind of fancy and it's fast. And number
Mhm.
two, there's this endpoint agent. And I was like, I hate endpoint agents. When I was on the customer side, the lightweight agent, right? It blue screen
Yep.
usairways.com. I spent my entire Labor Day weekend doing it. I got kicked right between the legs.
I
And
think there was
I
just a major outage with a lightweight agent also about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So
yeah.
yes.
So, and again, so like I immediately got into the support database. Like
Yeah.
we're allowed to have it, right? And I started looking for blue screen of death, high CPU, battery drain. I couldn't find it. And then I went to like an SE summit and I cornered David Creedy. He's a PM. He's still here to this day. I think he's been around for like 10 years. And I was like, hey, dude, I think you're deleting stuff just to keep me around. He's like, number one, I don't even know who you are. And number two, you big dumb idiot. What you have to understand is that the Zscaler client connector, really, it's the bread and butter on the endpoint. Its sole goal in life is to send traffic to the Zscaler cloud. We don't do any
Mhm.
enforcement there. All the stuff that would cause a blue screen of death, high CPU, and battery drain occurs in the Zscaler cloud. So it's up to us to figure that out, not the customer. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, when I had that moment, I was like, okay, now things are, I smell what the rock is cooking, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
making sense. And
Yep.
so when I look at that, anytime I go into a POV process and I talk about all these cool things they can do, it's not a whole bunch of agents. This is one agent that does
Yeah.
all of these things.
Right.
And it's also addition, but there's subtraction, right? So if I do my job correctly, I introduce my one agent, then all of a sudden your secure web gateway agent goes away, your VPN one, your digital end user monitoring, your DLP one, your CASB one, all that comes off.
Right. Right.
I always say like the trifecta to a successful deployment isn't just Zscaler. I think Zscaler is in there, but I think identity is huge. So I'm a huge Okta fan, Azure Active Directory. Although I joke, I say that they call themselves Entra ID. I'm like the identity company is having an identity crisis with what they call their
That's a
company.
good one. I like
Yeah,
that.
right.
It'll probably change next year too. The name,
Yeah,
the interface, the whole bit. So that's
yeah.
good. I like that.
And then the last one is EDR, right? And I wholeheartedly believe that every single endpoint in your environment should have some type of EDR, but I also believe that all cars should have airbags. I think it's more fundamental to prevent the accident from happening in the first
Right.
place. So if I can
Right.
block something in my cloud, that's great.
Yeah.
We still have EDR at the endpoint to
Yeah.
keep it
Yeah.
fast here.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, big fan of CrowdStrike to be 100%
Yeah.
transparent.
Yeah. We are too. Real strong, go CrowdStrike. Good
Yeah,
business here for that.
great partner for
Um,
us, that's for sure.
I guess one of the next questions I have in EDR is like an interesting pivot point on that. Um, EDR as a line of defense certainly protects an endpoint, but where I see its power is in protecting like essentially a trusted network from bad stuff on my laptop spreading to someone else's. Like, I've seen some more, I'll call it exotic configurations of Zscaler deployments where all east-west LAN traffic is blocked. So
Yeah.
like you have the tiniest subnets possible, and you allow north-south traffic from clients through Zscaler and Zscaler only, versus even accessing applications across a typical LAN to like really minimize and add that notion of zero trust on the inside as well. And I could imagine like that preventing like lateral moves and one person with a compromised laptop infecting the rest of the LAN and certainly like the sensitive assets. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but just kind of like this more like exotic, I don't know, lack of a better phrase there, configuration where we're completely again blocking like east-west traffic for lateral move protection and only using Zscaler even on a LAN on the inside.
So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this, and I would say that that's 100% our North Star. We want all of our customers to get there. And the idea is when I talk about work from anywhere, that means at home, Starbucks, abroad, but in the office as well.
Mhm.
So if you're off the network and you can only talk to application one, but not application two,
Right.
if you come onto the network, why should you be allowed to talk to application two? This goes
Yeah.
your quote unquote on the trusted network. So we look at
Right.
this and say zero trust is at the branch as well or on the
Yeah.
network.
Yep.
And the way that this would look is like, hey, all traffic, this goes through the Zero Trust Exchange, through Zscaler.
Mhm.
And so whether it's internet, it's SaaS, it's back at the data center, or if it's a private cloud application, everything goes through Zscaler, right?
Right.
Now there's some caveats there where you're like, well, Brian, if I'm, layer two adjacent to the data center, like and I'm in, I don't know, Wyoming, right? Maybe I don't want to go all the way to Chicago and then back down. That's cool. I have a solution, right? I have a VM that lives on-prem that can allow that east to west
Mhm.
microsegmentation to follow suit.
Mhm.
That handles the users, the applications. Like, but what about workload to workload type of communication? And that's where a recent acquisition came in. We're starting off looking at purely like OT type of networks, right?
Okay.
Stuff that
Yep.
doesn't normally go out.
Where you
And
couldn't put an agent on it, essentially,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, I
Yep.
have a server. Yep, you go for it, bud.
No, 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 you go for it. I was just like leading into it.
Yeah, yeah. So think of OT, IoT servers
Yep.
where you can't install an agent on there. What does this look like? And it's super creative. So if I go into like a factory, right, I have Windows 95 and Windows ME. Just kidding. Hopefully no one has that one. But the reality is they're out there. I can't
Um,
install an agent.
they are out there. Like we see XP, ME, like I haven't seen
Wow.
3.1 in a long time, but we still see like XP. It's on a lot of those OT devices or like laboratory equipment where interface cards haven't been upgraded. It was sold as a package deal in like the device manufacturer might not be around anymore, but it's critical. So these things exist and like it's difficult from a business perspective to say, hey, look, for security reasons, you need to invest $750,000 into a new device just to upgrade Windows.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
But yeah, 100%, right? And then the challenge around there is like, so do you go with a company that will give you an agent for Windows 3.1, right? Like, yeah, we'll backdate it even though it's out of support. No, because then this gets messy. And on top of that, like the microsegmentation story has been around like for 20 years, right? It's old
Yeah.
enough to have child support and alimony, but no one can do it, right? And so I look at this through the lens of like agent probably isn't the way to go. We
Yep.
did this acquisition of a company called AirGap, and it's actually super clever. So what it does is it is an on-premise device, and it's going to get introduced in the network via DHCP. So it's going to look at this and say, hey, I have like VLAN 100, and that's the 10.10.100 0/24 network, right?
Okay.
Host one to host two. Maybe they should talk to each other. Maybe they don't. There's a bunch of them there, right? So this helper comes out, the HTTP helper comes out and says, hey, everyone on a /24, we're like Oprah Winfrey, right? You're now a /32. I create a network of one. Like you get an
Yep.
you get your own
You get a
/32.
subnet, you get a subnet, you get a
Yeah,
everyone gets a subnet. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And so now all that traffic has to go through my appliance, right? Now this is where it gets special, right? So again, you can do that with like a firewall, but the brains of the operation isn't on that appliance. It's actually in the Zscaler cloud. So that's just like an enforcement tier. So it
Mm,
sits there, it listens transparently, and since it's on the network, it learns out, oh, that's a Windows 95 and that's Windows 3.1. And
mhm.
these are the applications that are supported. We know that we brought SMB it's going to break everything. So we take that telemetry, it goes to the Zscaler cloud, it creates a policy, and then it gets pushed down to there for enforcement. And of course, we can be in there in that kind of a transparent mode of like, hey, we put it in. This is what would have happened. We would have blocked nothing. You can put it there and you have peace of mind. Or worse yet, this is the policy that should be in there. There is a threat actor on the
Yep.
network at this moment in time and be able to dial in. The thing that I looked at, and I don't want to embellish and I don't want to give out too much information here, was I saw this with Illumio, Guardicore, Tetration. Like no one can actually meet the scale. Like anyone can do a small network, but a large one becomes very, very problematic. So
Right, right.
I met with some of the people right after the acquisition. And I was like, very skeptical, just like I was when I was talking about this agent and blue screens of death, right? I'm like, yeah, so tell me why you guys are cool. Like, I don't really believe this. What's your largest deployment? And they're like, oh, our largest deployment was like 200,000 workloads total. And at this point in time, outside of Zscaler, not even talking about that, I think the largest deployment I have seen in an enforcement position was only north of like 10,000. So to
Okay.
be at 200,000, I'm like, maybe these guys know what the heck they're actually talking
Yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah. The device counts in network identity start to add up pretty quickly too on the OT side of things as well. That's certainly something we've observed too. And it's not just manufacturing, it could be like building controls, other industrial controls too. Like you think of a connected building, if you're the management company of that, you have HVAC, lighting, elevators, security, fire. There's just so much on the network now, and much of it you can't install an agent on. So this box is almost like an agent for network stuff that you don't have to install anywhere.
And here's a crazy
It's
part. So
very
when we
cool.
think about HVAC and fire and suppressions and
Yeah,
all that good stuff, you also have third parties that need to come in here and talk to these things, right?
yeah,
And
right. Yeah, yep. Your
these
vendors
third
and whatnot.
parties,
Right, right, right. Yep, yep.
what do we do before? We put them on VPN, we put them on the network, we allow them to make changes, and then something happens. Take like a cruise line, right? Like, well, they did something, and then like a week later, everything broke. Well, who did what? We have no idea,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that remediation is
Yep,
insane.
yep.
And so what Zscaler did is we said, hey, how about you don't need to have any client on your device to come in here to talk to that system. So you can be a third-party contractor. And what's really cool is like all you need is a credit score, a heartbeat, and a modern browser, baby. And so you come in with Firefox,
Yeah,
Chrome, Edge, whatever it is, and they're going to go out to some type of vanity URL, right?
yep,
Maybe it's called as the new beautiful.zscaler.com or just portal.whatever.com.
yep.
When they arrive there, you're going to authenticate them. Now they can bring their own identity. You can federate on the back end. You can cut them their own service account.
Okay, okay.
Based upon identity, I give them like a tile, like similar to like what you would see in like an Okta, right? Now keep in mind this is in browser. I'm not loading up anything.
Right, right.
So that icon could be to ServiceNow so they can open up a ticket to let people know. It can do just-in-time provisioning, which means there's nothing there unless you're doing it within a certain window. I can do session monitoring, session or session proctoring, right? I think is
Yep,
the
yep.
appropriate term. Session recording. I can do a credential vault, and then I can also sandbox, which means, Matt, if you had to come into Zscaler to update the HVAC system, you're not on the network. You can talk to just the one application, and even though it's a web browser, I can render HTTP,
Hmm.
HTTPS,
Okay,
HTML5, SSH, VNC, and RDP
cool.
all within that. And then I do
Very
browser
cool.
isolation to stop you from taking something that's there and then putting it on a third-party system. So it can
Right.
allow you to upload some firmware. I'm still going to sandbox it, make sure it's not malicious.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's good, allow you to do your thing. And oh, by the way, let's say you screw the pooch somehow and you create an outage. We have a session recording of everything that you just did.
yeah,
That way it
yeah.
makes it easy to back out the change. And so
Yep,
you think of like these highly protected networks, something that's going to, manage a dam and water flows, it's there, right? We have
yep,
all the
yep.
capabilities. So from healthcare to manufacturing to government, DoD, it's a solution that's pretty elegant in my opinion.
That's awesome. I love it. Love it. I feel like we have run out of time.
All right, I'm coming
Unfortunately,
back.
like I know we keep talking here. So for folks that have put questions in the chat, and there are a couple, like we'll definitely get back to you. I'm really sorry for going over a little bit there again. Um in the last like minute or so here, Brian, any closing thoughts, closing comments that you'd like to leave our listeners or viewers, or I guess both with?
Let's keep them guessing, right? What else can
Right, right.
Sinclair do? I'll throw it out there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with you. I'd love to even debate with you. I love talking, hard stuff, hard questions, and building rapport. I do have my own little podcast with a couple of colleagues of mine. It's called PEPCAC.
Cool.
Stands for the problem exists between the chair and the keyboard. I'm sure we're familiar with that
That's good.
acronym.
Yep.
It's out there
Yep.
weekly. Come check it out. And I'm always looking for guests. So guess what, Matt? Now you're on the hook.
Oh, geez. Oh, God, I'll be on the hot seat
Now
next
you're on
time.
my side.
Jeez. Oh, man. All right. Well, Brian Zscaler, thank you so much for joining us today. My one closing thought is you mentioned the word North Star like 2 or 3 times in this, and that's actually the name of our co-managed services offering, so our managed service.
I love it.
So that was not planned, and that's one of my
Yeah.
babies here at Winslow. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
um,
Great
and
minds think alike.
yeah, you got it, man. All right. Well, thank you again very much for joining us. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it and hope this was worth your while. If you do want to re-listen to it again, something you missed, we'll have it up on the YouTube channel shortly as well. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Please have me
Thanks,
back.
Brian.
I love you.
Thank you.